Hi, this video is designed for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to help you to do the research necessary to identify your deceased relatives and prepare their names for the saving temple ordinances. I developed this as a supplement for a Sunday school mini course in family history for the young single adults in my ward. It will be of particular value to those of you who look at your ancestor records in FamilySearch.org and think either it's all done or I'd have to be a genealogy expert to be able to do what is not done yet. The truth is, there are still many deceased relatives that you can find and for whom you can perform temple ordinances. Now, these relatives don't have to be your direct ancestors. They can be their children, their siblings, their cousins, their in-laws, and so on. So long as you can link to them as a relative, with a couple of caveats, you can research them and submit to perform the temple ordinances. The intent of this video is to show you how. It is assumed that you already have an LDS login. If not, get your membership number and create one before proceeding. If you are in doubt, it will be on your temple recommend. Otherwise, check with your ward clerk. With that in hand, you can create an account either in LDS.org or FamilySearch.org. Once created in either site, you can use the same login credentials on both sites. Now, the purpose of this video is to encourage you to follow what you see demonstrated here. You can do all of this from within a computer at your own home. As we just heard in April General Conference, the Family History Library truly now is in your home. We will use two tools in order to make this work. The first is a process with 6 steps. The acronym for the process is Elijah. Enter, look, investigate, justify, add to your tree, and take to the house of the Lord. The second tool is an internet website known as Pazilla. In this video, I will show an example of finding a distant cousin, a descendant of one of my ancestors. Assuming you're not an experienced genealogist, we want to look for someone who is in the sweet spot for your research. Typically, that means someone who was born in the 1800s to early 1900s, because of the preponderance of available source records. There are a couple of rules to submitting for temple work that we need to consider. These are the caveats that I previously mentioned. In addition to limiting ourselves to relatives, we cannot submit for someone who has not been dead for at least a year. Also, anyone born within 110 years requires permission from the nearest living relative before we submit. So, to start with, we'll search for those that were born before 1904. This video having been made in 2014. Now, please keep in mind that this video was scripted and there are steps that might seem a bit oversimplified when compared to your own experience. But don't let any dead ends that you have detract you from continuing your search. That being said, I began this process, I found the individual to focus on, and I scripted the video in one evening. So don't persuade yourself that it is that difficult. Now, a key to the process is to seek to be worthy of the Holy Spirit and pray for His influence to guide you. Then follow your impressions. If this statement of the need for worthiness concerns you, may I suggest that you visit with your bishop for help. So let's get started. The first step of the Elijah process is enter. We could start from FamilySearch.org and find a link to Pazilla.org, but rather I am just going to go straight into Pazilla.org. And here I will be prompted to sign in to Family Tree. So I will use my Family Search credentials to log in. And what this does is links my tree from Family Search into this Pazilla tool. What we're presented with here is a unique looking ancestry chart. It's a tree with each node representing an individual. Myself at the beginning and my parents and so on. Blues representing men, red representing women. I'm going to go a couple more generations back. My chart's pretty full, my tree's pretty full. As we mouse over, and as you've seen, the information shows up, some data on them, the line from them back to me, and some options. My particular impression was to select Joshua Abbott. As I click on him, it becomes stable. And I can see here some data on him. I can see these options are now available. And my line down here I can read with clarity. I chose him for a couple of reasons. He was preceding the Restoration, born just before the 1800s in the United States. So I'm thinking he will have descendants in the sweet spot of being born between 1800 and 1904, which is the 110-year mark. So I'm going to go ahead and view his descendants. As I do that, a new tab opens up with descendants of Joshua Abbott. This golden thread represents my direct line back to me. I'm going to go just one more generation to 5 generations. Now notice on the left this legend indicates that anyone that died before age 16 is marked with a yellow square, representing that they probably are not married, probably didn't have children, probability is lower. And then also those that were born with 110 years are marked for us with a gray. Now I'm going to recommend at the beginning that you avoid these grays, or those born within 110 years, so that you get a taste of success without the impediment of requiring permission from a living relative. But as you become more familiar with the process later, you may choose to chase after these that need approval, which could lead to linking yourself to living relatives and potentially for opportunities to missionary work. After looking through a few of the end-of-the-line nodes, I settled on this one right here, Charles Endicott Lowe. He was born in 1895 in New Hampshire. Now I'm going to click on View in Family Tree, which opens up a new window, a new tab, and brings up the record for this Charles Endicott Lowe. We're beginning now the process of investigation. I want to see what I can find out about Charles Endicott Lowe and what connections I can make to people who are related to him but not yet added to the tree. We can look sideways, down, and up. Sideways for spouse and siblings, down for children, and up for parents. In this case, we already have his parents, but if we find a spouse, we can look for her parents. As we see here, he appears to have no other siblings that have been identified, and we also have not found a spouse, or a spouse has not been identified for him yet. So look down to see there are no sources attached to him, and so we will begin the process of investigation through search records. Now as we click on that, a new tab opens up, and on the left hand side we see that the search parameters are already filled in for us. If we wanted to further filter those, we could. I'm satisfied with what's been found here. As a matter of fact, there's quite a few very good records here for this individual, and it turns out that his birth record, his World War I draft registration card, and censuses from 1900, 1930, and 1940 provide us with confirmation of details that are already in our FamilySearch.org record, as well as information that gives us what we're looking for. There's enough information in each of these records to verify that they are all the same Charles E. or Charles Endicott Lowe between their age or date of birth, the place of birth, the parents, or etc. We can make that connection. Now, I'm going to recommend that when you investigate these records, these source records, that you open them in a new tab. So if I right click and open in a new tab, it will bring up an overview of this record and information that's been provided thanks to those who have done indexing, so that we can review what the record might provide. There is also a view document. If we go back to these list of records, anything that has a camera icon next to it indicates that there is an image. So let's view the document. This is a birth record for Charles Endicott Lowe, and what we find here is a variety of things: where he was born and when, that he was the first child, his age of his parents, and their names. All of this agreeing with what's in the record. So we have full confidence that this is a source that is applicable. If we go to additional sources, we find him as a son in a census record for 1900. Now, we typically want to look at the top, see where the census was taken, so the location and the date should be found up here. So this is June 11th in Suffolk, Massachusetts, Winthrop Township. So all that information we'll probably want to record in our notes. And then we'll go down and we'll look and try to find the Lowe family. There it is, Eugene, the father, Fanny, the mother, and Charles Endicott. It's the only child, but we see here that Fanny has only one child, and that child is alive. We can see when she was born, when the son was born, when the father was born. If we look over to the right, we see where their parents were born. We can see occupations. It's useful sometimes to just go up to the header to see what each of these columns represents. So that's the 1900. We could also see that there's a draft card when he was 21. Didn't really add a whole lot to our information, but it does give some physical description of him. It says he was short, medium build. We do see his signature here. He was single at the time. He was a student, unemployed. So if we keep going through the remainder of the documents, we find in 1940, here's a census where he is the head of household, right here, with his wife, Edna, a son, John, and Mary, a daughter. We see that there is a mother-in-law, Mary, and the indexers, I think, got this wrong. That's a Rowell. They put Powell, or Roll, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. And I'll show you my reasoning for that earlier on. If we go to the 1930 census record, we find, again, he is the head of household. Here we actually find a little bit more information. Not that it disagrees, but is very useful. We have his wife is Edna R. Has a son, Mary Jean, is an adopted daughter. We see where they were born and when they were born. And we see Mary Rowell. Here we can see her roll. Very clearly that's an R. That's the mother-in-law. I'm going to look at Edna R, and that, I believe, is then her maiden name, and that's what I'm going to document and justify as her maiden name. So actually this is the record, the key record for me, that I'm going to use to indicate that this wife of Charles Endicott Lowe is Edna Rowell. I know now when she was born and the date that she was born, when she was born and the place that she was born, at least the state of Massachusetts, which is sufficient information to identify her uniquely and to allow us to request her temple ordinances.